All right, let's talk about React State. If you're a developer, you know the feeling, right? It's this maze of libraries, opinions, and everyone telling you their way is the best way. But what if I told you the secret isn't picking the trendiest tool? What if it's about building the right mental model first? In this explainer, we're going to build that model, a strategic guide to help you make way better state decisions every single time.
This right here is the whole ball game. This quote is our North Star for today. We're going to keep coming back to this because, honestly, it's a total game changer. The second you stop thinking about libraries and start thinking about how to model change, the right tool just kind of becomes obvious.
Okay, so first things first. Before we can manage state, what even is it? Well, put simply, it's just any piece of data that can change over time and affects what your user sees on the screen. But, and this is the important part, not all state is created equal. Let's break down the different kinds.
Getting this breakdown is absolutely crucial. You've got local UI state, that's simple stuff, like whether a dropdown is open or closed. Then there's global app state, which is data that lots of different parts of your app need, like the user's account info. Server state is a big one. That's the data that actually lives on your back end. And finally, URL state, which is what makes your pages bookmarkable. Now, through all of this, there's one golden rule. Keep your state as close as physically possible to where it's being used. Seriously, that one principle will solve about half of your problems before they even start.
The great news is you don't always need some massive, complicated library. React gives us a fantastic set of tools right out of the box. The whole trick is knowing which question each tool is designed to answer. So let's frame this like we're prepping for a technical interview, asking the right questions to get to the right solution. All right, question number one. This is the scenario you're going to run into 90% of the time. You have one little piece of information that needs to change. It only affects one component. Think of an input field in a form or a little toggle switch. What's the first tool you reach for?
Yep, use state. This is your bread and butter, your go-to hook for all that simple, isolated UI state. It's designed to live and die inside a single component. Now here's a pro tip. When your new state depends on the old state, always use the functional update form. It will save you from some really subtle, annoying bugs. Oh, and another common pitfall, avoid duplicating state. If you can calculate a value on each render, just do that instead of storing it in state. Okay, but what happens when things get a little messier? What if your state updates aren't just simple value changes? I'm talking about a multi-step wizard, or that classic loading success error dance you have to do every time you call an API. A simple use state starts to get clumsy here. You need a different tool.
And this is exactly where UseReducer shines. The best way to think about it is as a little state machine for your component. Instead of just setting a new value, you dispatch actions that describe what happened, like user clicked submit. Then, a central function, the reducer, figures out what the next state should be based on that action. It's basically a mini Redux, but scoped just to your component, which makes your complex logic way more explicit, predictable, and a heck of a lot easier to test.
All right, on to the next big challenge. We've all been there. You have some data at the very top of your app, like the current user's theme, and some little button component 10 levels deep needs it. Passing that prop down and down and down through every single layer is just awful. That's prop drilling. So how do we solve it? This is the textbook problem that UseContext was built to solve. But, and listen up because this is a senior level insight, Context is a dependency injection tool, not a state management tool. Its job is to teleport data from a provider down to a consumer, skipping all the components in between. The critical thing you have to remember is what I call the re-render trap. If you put state that changes frequently into context, every single component that consumes it will re-render, and your app's performance can absolutely tank.
Now we're getting into a concept that truly separates the intermediate devs from the senior ones. This is, without a doubt, one of the most important distinctions you can make in modern React development. And it's this: not all state is client state.
Just take a look at this comparison. Client state is stuff that lives and breathes in the browser. It's temporary, it's synchronous, it's controlled by the user. Think form inputs. Server state, on the other hand, is a completely different beast. It's persistent, it's asynchronous, and you don't really own it. The backend does. It comes with a whole different set of problems like caching, refetching, and invalidation. Trying to manage server state with client state tools is a massive anti-pattern. You should always use a dedicated library like React Query or RTK Query for this job.
Okay, so if React's built-in hooks are great for local state, and server state libraries handle all our data fetching, when on earth you actually need a big global state library like Redux? That's the million-dollar question. Let's dig into the key triggers that tell you it's time to bring in the big guns.
So, you know you might need a global library when your app hits a certain level of complexity. The main triggers are things like state that needs to be shared between totally unrelated parts of your component tree, or when you need advanced debugging capabilities like time travel. A really big one is when you're on a large team and you need strict rules and patterns just to keep things from turning into chaos. It's all about managing complex client state, but at a much larger scale.
Now, when you look at these libraries, try to focus on the mental model, not the syntax. That's way more important. Redux Toolkit is like a single centralized brain for your entire application's state. Zustand is much simpler. Think of it like taking a used state hook and just pulling it outside of your components so anyone can subscribe to it. And Jotai uses a more bottom-up approach, based on these tiny independent pieces of state called atoms that you compose together. How you like to think about the problem will really determine which tool feels the most natural.
So let's put them head to head. Redux Toolkit, amazing for dev tools and scaling across big teams, but yeah, it's got a little more boilerplate. Zustand and Jotai are way lighter, you can get up and running much faster, but they offer fewer guardrails. You see, there's no single best library. It's all about trade-offs. You're just picking the tool whose trade-offs you're most comfortable with for your specific project.
So, how are you supposed to remember all that? Well, here's a simple rule of thumb for you. This is total interview gold. Think of it like this. Redux is for governance, when you're on a large team that needs strict rules. Zustand is for simplicity, when you just need pragmatic global state without the fuss. And Jotai is for precision, when you need fine-grained control over performance and re-renders. Governance, simplicity, precision. Okay, we've covered the core concepts, the different tools, and the philosophies behind them. Now, let's put it all together and synthesize everything into a final, actionable framework that you can take with you and use on your very next project.
First, let's just quickly review what not to do. These are the common traps that lead to messy code, bugs, and performance problems. Duplicating your state, storing derived data you could just calculate, overusing a global store for everything, overloading context with high-frequency updates, and mixing server and client state. Seriously, just avoiding these pitfalls is more than half the battle.
And here it is, your take-home guide. This matrix maps a specific problem directly to the recommended tool. Simple UI element? Use state. Complex series of state changes? Use reducer. Any data that comes from your backend? The answer is always React query, SWR, or something similar. This is your cheat sheet. Use it to make the right call every single time. So, we've come full circle, right back to where we started. The real takeaway here isn't about the libraries. It's about correctly modeling the kind of change you're dealing with. Use state models' simple values. Use reducer models' complex transitions. Use context models the distribution of data. And those big libraries like Redux, they model the orchestration of that state at a massive scale.
And that's our guide. The next time you're sitting down to solve a state management problem, I want you to resist the urge to immediately ask, which library should I use? Instead, I want you to ask yourself, how will I model the change? Start there, and I promise you, the right answer will be much easier to find.